So it's very useful to seriously discipline yourself voluntarily, especially when you're young. You can find out what constraints you can abide within. You can find out how hard you could push yourself. You can find out how hard you can work. You can find out how productive and generous you can be. And all that's unbelievably useful. Princess and protected from horrible Mother Nature until she hit puberty, in which time she turned into an evil villain, because that's how the family worked. Perfect child, evil teenager, overnight. And then, well, that was hard on her, and she wasn't prepared because she thought the world was princess world, and, you know, she couldn't go through a butcher store without having a fit. And no wonder, you know, like, really, Jesus, you know, it's no wonder, but you do it. But she couldn't, so we used to go to butcher stores, and that would make her cry, and that she was a vegetarian, that would make her cry, and, you know, bemoan the cruelty of the world. And it's like, yeah, fair enough, man, those are bloody slabs of meat. It's like, I don't know why everyone isn't screaming when they walk through the butcher store, but you got to get used to it, man, because you can't live in the world otherwise. And so the dream character, who was a gypsy, told her that she had to go visit a slaughterhouse, which seemed rather impractical. And so I asked her if she could think of anything else to do, and she thought, well, why don't we go visit a funeral home and watch an embalming? And I thought, oh, good. That sounds like a fun way to spend a day. And so I phoned up a funeral parlor, and I said I had a client who was terrified of death. Yeah, and I was a therapist who was also a little shaky on the concept myself. And so they had no problem with that. They deal with death all the time, which is really something to think about, right? A human being can actually have an occupation where they do nothing but deal with death, and they don't go stark raving mad. It's like, what the hell's up with that? It's like working in a palliative care ward where your clients that you know have a relationship, all they're going to do is die this week, next week, the week after. People do that. It's like, those people are tough, man. They're tough. So anyways, we went and watched this embalming, which was, I have a rather high level of disgust sensitivity, so it was a little on the rough side for me. But she sat there, and first, well, she was not, we were outside this little room, she was not looking at that, man. So I asked my parents once if they could take a drug that would return them to being 18 physically, but they had all the wisdom that they'd accrued over the years. That seems like a good thing. It's a long time. But the alternative is, you know, truncated existence with death. And that's also not particularly palatable, let's say. Maybe by the time you were old, you'd have had enough. You know, and you could just let go. And, you know, you do see this with people, is that, and we kind of know this even when we grieve. You know, maybe you have a relative who's 95 and they die, and people are sad, but you say, well, you know, they lived a full life, and the fuller the life, the less, in some ways, the less catastrophic the demise appears to be. And so it might be that if you fully exhausted yourself, that your life would be enough. So I know, you know, people, I mentioned this already, people who are old and they look back on their life, they're often sorrowful and regretful for the things they didn't do, you know, the things they left undone and maybe now can't do. You know, maybe you have grown kids now, you think, well, if you could have children again, would you? And maybe the answer is yes, but another answer is, well, you know, I had kids already. I already did that. And if you did that well, maybe that's enough. You know, we have grandkids now, and that's not exactly the same as having kids. It's sort of, it's kids light, right? And it's wonderful. But you made a joke about that when you were on stage. You said they have all the advantages of children, grandchildren, with none of the disadvantages. And that's a joke, but everybody laughs because everybody gets that. And it's great to have grandchildren. And like, would we return to our youth and do it again?